could take the pitchfork from the devil. Keep a super suit like I'm incredible. From the deep blue sea to the dark blue sky, I'm the baddest man alive. I'll grab a crocodile by his tail, handcuff the judge and put the cop in jail. Make the meanest woman break down inside. I'm the baddest man alive. I'm the baddest man alive. I'll take no measure, I'll take no try. Sometimes I feel like I can't fly. I'm the baddest man alive. I'm the baddest man alive. I'm bad, beating black, but I'm bad, beating good. Say my name 3 times and you knock on wood. Cherry bear hooks, I trail rides with her. Flashing backs on the top, the way a gangster should. I snap scoop on the mouth of a tiger. Take a gasoline bath, then I walk through fire. Yeah, Uncle Grizzly suck milk from a titty. Take the sergeant hat from his head and use it for a frisbee. Spit in the pocket, y'all face. Have a menage a father, 2 female apes. They're sleep in the power of butcher knives. I drink honey straight from the beehive. But you jumping off the Empire State. But nigga, on the gate across the Golden Gate. But nigga, with the baddest man alive, and I don't plan to die. When the drill people come, I look right in his eye. I bust him in the face of the witch underneath. Tell a great white shark to go and brush his teeth. Other members know the golden reach. And I date rape you right in front of the beast. The baddest man alive, and I won't plan to die. Come on, somebody. I'm the baddest man alive. I'll take no measure, I'll take no try. Sometimes I feel like I can't fly. I'm the baddest man alive. I'm the baddest man alive.
What's going on, everybody? It's Justin here with the Juke Joint live interviews, and I got a special interview tonight. We got Harrison Smith, who's a pretty well-known big-time indie director, done a lot of horror films, as you've probably seen during the overlays. He's known for Death House, which you can find on Netflix. Camp Dread was his first film, and The Fields, which he wrote a couple years ago in 2011. But yeah, we'll be starting right here after a second. All righty, what's going on, Harrison? How you doing?
Hey, how are you, Justin? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. You know, if people don't know, years ago I used to do a podcast, and we actually had Harrison Smith as our first interview. And the guy I worked with scheduled it for the night I had to work, so I couldn't actually be there. So it's kind of nice to actually get around to actually talking to you and interviewing you.
It's great to be here. Thanks. I'm excited to talk about stuff.
Yeah. So for people that maybe don't know who you are, maybe give a little background to you know, what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm an independent filmmaker making mostly horror. I'm known for Camp Dread, The Fields, Death House, 6 Degrees of Hell, Zombie Killers. You know, the special just released in October through Blue Fox and Red Hound Films, and I have a new one coming out. I'm very excited about later on this year. Called Where the Scary Things Are. So it's a monster movie.
Cool, cool. Now, Death House you can find on Netflix right now, right?
Just left Netflix. It was on almost 2 years, and now it's over on Amazon Prime. I believe it's on Tubi TV as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's on Vudu. It's all over the place.
No, I mean to talk a little bit about Death House because that was the most recent one you've done, right?
Yeah. Well, no. The special is my most recent. Before that, yeah, I believe it was Death House. Yeah.
Okay. I mean I saw the tagline for it and it seems to make sense because they call it the Expendables of horror movies, and it kind of is.
Yeah, they call it the Expendables of horror movies.
I mean, you do have like the all-star cast of horror people. You got Kane Hodder, who played Victor Crowley and Jason, Tony Todd, who was Leatherface, I believe, and
No, Tony Todd was Candyman.
Candyman, sorry, Candyman, and you had Sid Haig, who's most people know from like the Rob Zombie films. That's where he got big, but he's been big in the horror film forever. But how do you how do you get that cast together?
Well, I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. I got the cast inherited from really it was Michael Eisenstadt and Rick Finkelstein, who were approached by Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Gunnar always wanted to get this movie made. This was Gunnar's like passion project. And I was at a screening in Los Angeles with Billy Zane and a couple other folks, Dee Wallace, for Death House. I'm sorry, for Death House, for Zombie Killers. And they approached me afterwards. The producers said, well, listen, there's this project. It's called Death House. We're you come recommended. Would you be interested in meeting about this? So I met with Mike. He pitched it, as an Expendables of horror kind of thing. That's not my thing. And I read the script. There were 2 scripts. And I read Gunnar's script first. And then I read, there was a rewrite of it. And Gunnar wasn't happy with the rewrite. And I was asked my opinion to see if there was anything from the rewrite that could make it into the final film. And Gunnar was not upset, but he was nervous about his own draft. He was, by his own admission, he was not good with dialogue. He had several concepts that he wanted to stay. He wanted the film to have a redemptive factor and that it wasn't just killing. He wanted it to have a commentary on good versus evil, what is truly good, what is truly evil. And he had, in my film, it ended up with the 5 evils. In his, it was the 4 horsemen. And I added a woman. I added Lindsay Hartley to the mix to add a woman to fill out the 5 points on the pentagram. And I rewrote the story. I used nothing of the second draft whatsoever because Gunnar did not want that, which gave rise to an internet rumor that Gunnar was not happy with his own project, which was not true. He knew that his original script needed work. Somebody rewrote it. He didn't like that rewrite, and then it came to me. So I met with Gunnar several times. I was unaware that he was terminally ill, and had a great time with him. In another world, I always say this, in another world, he could have been Santa Claus. He was just such a big, nice man, big snowy white beard, and what a kind person. And like I said, I didn't know he was dying. Gunnar knew he was dying, but I did not. And that's why it was imperative to Gunnar to get this done quickly. He really wanted to know that it was going to get made. And so we worked hard to move this forward. I came up with the idea of it taking place in a subterranean prison. And kind of like what really moved me about it was I was in a bar. I usually like to go work in a bar sometimes. Ironically, I really don't drink, but I like the atmosphere of a bar. And they had a preview coming up for Jurassic World, the first Jurassic World at the time. And I suddenly got the idea. It's like, well, what if you just make it Jurassic Park without the dinosaurs? And instead of dinosaurs, you have these monsters, and the ride breaks down, and the monsters get loose. And so I borrowed a lot of inspiration from Escape from New York and a number of other action films, Assault on Precinct 13, very John Carpenter influence. And I felt since this was a tribute to horror, you might as well also, invoke a lot of the masters of the genre. And, Carpenter is probably the undisputed master of the genre. So I ran it all by Gunnar. He signed off. He approved. I never bought into the Expendables of horror because I felt that it would carry the wrong message. I was worried that fans would start thinking that Tony Todd was going to be Candyman and Kane was going to be Jason and Robert Englund was going to be Freddy. We couldn't do that. And I was right. A lot of the time in the media, it invoked this. And I'm not really a big supporter of mashup movies. I don't think that really, I think they're done just to make money. I've never seen a mashup movie where it wasn't done just for the fact of mashing up the characters. I did not think Freddy versus Jason was all that great. I know it has its fans, and that's fine if you enjoy it. God bless
It's kind
you.
of like a fan service movie in a way. It's just like we're just trying to like appease fans of those genre by putting those.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, and Gunnar didn't want to do that. So, and then you get the internet where everybody likes to chime in, and a lot of people talk but don't really know what they're talking about. And like Robert Englund, for example, we were ready to have him. We had his signed letter of intent. He's a very, very generous man and a very nice man. And I've had the pleasure to sit down with him several times. And the issue was Robert's schedule was crazy. When the money finally moved to make the movie, it didn't jive with Robert's schedule. And to show you how much Robert really wanted to be part of it, we were ready, and he was ready to open up his backyard to allow us to shoot in his backyard of his personal home just to get footage of him to make this movie. But his schedule, I think he was going back and forth between Canada and Scotland at the time, and it just wasn't going to be in the cards. And I ran into him about 6 months later, and he bought me a drink, and he's like, Harrison, I am so sorry about that. But just what a generous, very nice man. And we wish we could have got him, and we really, really tried. It was tough. So we wanted to get a lot of people in. Schedules worked, schedules didn't. But the big thing was we didn't want anybody thinking it was going to be a monster mashup. And my point was driven home when I met with Tony Todd at a convention, and I think we were sneak previewing the movie at that time to fans. And Tony announced that he had turned down quite a bit of money to be offered a movie where Candyman would fight the Leprechaun from Leprechaun.
Oh man, I remember. Yeah, I used to sit up with my buddies and watch those movies.
Yeah, well, I remember somebody in the audience said, "Why did you turn that down?" And I'll never forget what Tony said. He just went, "Because it's stupid."
Well, I was thinking like you talk about the mashup movies. In a way, it's almost like being a cover band. It's like you can only get like so far or popular, doing something like that as opposed to doing something original.
Yeah. And look, when Abbott and Costello did it with the Frankenstein monster, Dracula, and the Wolfman, those monsters were at the end of their time. They were no longer scary. And I've written about this. I just did a piece, as a matter of fact, in Dread Central about it. And it's also on a podcast that I have that these monsters after World War II just didn't carry the punch that they did before the war. I mean, let's face it, after World War II, you had, the atomic bomb, the horrors, the real horrors of the Holocaust were coming to us. Suddenly, the Frankenstein monster and Dracula, they're just not so scary anymore compared to what the world was offering us. And so they mashed them up. Universal thought, well, we have these properties. We'll put these properties together with Bud and Lou. And it worked. And for a lot of people, they remember that movie fondly because that was kind of their introduction to horror. It's safe horror, right? And there are some elements of horror in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I mean, look, Lon Chaney's transformation into the Wolfman, even then, was still the same as it was in the original 1941 Wolfman. It was still scary to me as a kid. The monster throws the one doctor through the window in that movie and kills her. Lots of stuff in there, but it worked. And that mashup formula worked. And Universal had been doing that. They mashed up the monsters before. You had, Frankenstein versus the Wolfman. You had all these characters, and then you had the House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. So studios were catching on to the mashup thing. With Death House, there was no intention ever, and I'll end it with this. I'll get off my rant on it, because just before we screened Death House as a sneak preview, someone tweeted, I'm lucky enough to go see Death House tonight at this sneak screening, and I still think Harrison Smith is going to fool us. I think this is going to be like Freddy versus Jason. And I tweeted back, I just caught it as I was going into the screening, and I wrote back, I'm letting you know right now, if you think this is going to be a Freddy versus Jason and you're going to see Kane Hodder in a hockey mask and Tony Todd with a hook on his hand, you are going to hate this movie. I'm just letting you know that. You will hate it. And son of a bitch, the guy hated it. So
well,
I was right.
No matter what you do, you're going to get somebody that hates something,
Yeah, well, that's okay. At least, and Sid Haig said something. I'll tell you what, man, what a loss that we don't have Sid Haig anymore, because when I had Sid on set for those 2 days, I learned so much from this man. And I remember he was ill. He asked if he could perform his scene sitting down, so I rewrote the scene where he's in kind of like a picnic chair, a captain's chair, because he couldn't stand anymore. But during that time, during lunch, I got to sit with him one-on-one, and that was a gift, because I remembered sitting down, I brought him his lunch, and I remember he's like, so what do we talk about? He goes, I've never really sat and ate with a director like this. And I said, I don't want to talk at all. I want you to tell me everything. Tell me everything you've seen. You're more than defined by Rob Zombie. You have had an almost 50-year career in this business. You've seen it change. You saw it start. You've been in Roger Corman films. You've been all over the place. I want to know. And I'm telling you, I learned so much from him about distribution and the way films were released and the process of green lighting and all of that. So when we went to do the official sneak screening, and Sid was there, we were sitting in a bar, and he said, did you bring your ratings cards? And I said, yes, I did. He goes, let me see them. So I handed the stack, and he goes, I only need to see one. So he took my one card, and he said, all right, good. You got your scale of 0 to 10. I said, right. He goes, so 0 is the worst? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, let me tell you something, Harrison. This is what you want. He said, you want a small stack of 0s, 1s, 2s, and 3s. And he said, of course you want your higher stack of 7, 8, 9s, and 10s. But what you don't want is a stack of 5s. Because if you have 5s, that means your film made no impression on anybody. He said, let them hate it or let them love it. But even hate elicits a response.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Instead of everybody going,
Yeah, if it makes you feel something, even if you're like, oh my God, that was horrible. It's like it made you feel something, so it contacted on a certain level. In my chat here, Dio Brando, I see mostly my channel started off as like I'm an artist. I started 2 years ago. I had a hand injury right here. And like I started teaching. It's a circulatory disease. Sorry, my dogs are going nuts. One of them's named Gunner. Okay. And when you said Gunner a bunch of times, he got all hyper. But yeah, so like I started drawing, and I'm mostly like known for art and comics and stuff. But one of my mod here, Dio Brando, he actually asked to put something up here. It's on the screen. He says Death House is awesome. It's one of the reasons why I write and draw horror manga.
Wow. Well, thank you. And you know what? Gunner would be thrilled to hear that, because it was his desire to make sure that this film reached the true horror fans. He wanted this to be a Valentine to the convention goers. That's what he really wanted. So Dio, was it Dio?
Yeah, Dio Brando is his name.
You're making, if Gunner's looking down on us right now, you're making him very happy, because that's the kind of thing he would want to hear. So thank you for that. But it's Gunner's credit. It really is.
Well, for anybody that doesn't know, I was going to play the trailer for Death House here, so everybody can kind of get a feel for it here. Let's see here. Hopefully this works.
The Death House, established in 1954 under the Eisenhower administration, serves as a federal maximum security prison Medical, Psychological, and Parapsychological Research Center.
Agent Novak, meet your fellow graduate, Agent Toria Boone.
Welcome to Death House. Does it live up to what you study?
Ask me again in 12 hours.
Some are dosed with just LSD, while others are subjected to electroshock, sensory deprivation, all to break down the subject's personality.
They've got some surprises waiting for you and your girl here.
Our goal is to eradicate evil.
I will fuck you in hell.
Did Sieg ever mention Death House to you? Ever any talk of the 5 evils?
I know this house is insane, and I know that you have to be careful.
Don't you have something special lined up to kill everybody inside this hellhole?
Tell me you're both armed.
What about the 5 evils?
You know something.
I know everything, Novak.
Redman!
We gotta find a way up.
I am immortal.
We need to get out of here.
I will follow you to hell. The way out is not that way. It's down to them. With me.
We forgot to close the elevator shaft.
Yeah, I gotta say that line that Kane uses when he says the way out's down, with them, with me. It reminded me of the Watchmen with Rorschach when he's in the prison. Yeah, you're not locked up. You're not locked up in here with me. I'm not locked up in here with you. You're locked up in here with me.
Yeah, I wanted the movie to be very much like your surfing HBO in 1988 at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you come right in the middle of that and go, I got to finish this shit. Like that's what I wanted.
See, when I growing up, my cousins were girls, but they were in all the porn stuff. So it's like that's what it definitely reminded me of. But so the transition a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of an echo on your end. Let me see here.
On my end.
Yeah, I think it's coming through your speaker.
I can try to turn these off here.
Yeah, see if that'll
Is
help.
that any better?
There we go. That's perfect. Yeah, I was getting like a reverb through your speakers. Anyway.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so I've got no sound here now. No, wait. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Well, the transition I was going to the other film that I watched that I enjoyed was The Fields.
The Fields,
and
yeah.
You wrote that, right? That was your writing?
Yeah, I wrote and I produced The Fields. I did not direct.
No, it's like you still got some pretty big names in it. Tara Reid's in it. We were talking off air about Cloris Leachman, who unfortunately, rest in peace, just passed away last week.
Yeah.
For those of you who know Cloris Leachman, the younger generation might know her as a grandmother from Malcolm in the Middle, but she's been around for a long time.
Raising Hope.
Raising Hope too, yeah. She's been around for a long time though. She's a pretty well-known actress, but I actually thought she was great in that too, because she actually has like some little lines that add a little bit of comic relief to it. But she kind of, seeing the trailer, I thought Tara Reid was the lead, and it almost felt like Cloris Leachman and the kid were the lead.
Yeah, Tara plays my mother in the film, and but Cloris is really the lead in the way that she's in the film much longer. But Tara's role is highly important. She brings me to the farm where I used to stay. The little boy represents me. It's a true story.
Yeah, most people don't know it's based off true events from your life.
Yeah, it happened to me in the summer of late summer of 1973.
So, well, I don't know if it's really spoilers because the movie came out in 2011, so I think we can kind of talk a
Yeah, I
little
think
bit
people
about it.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, but so like where the ending goes, it where the whole Manson connection, whatever. So it was like a cult or something that was like living by your family's farm or something.
We don't ever really know to this day. There was a guy. We had a dairy. Like my grandparents used to call it the milk farm, but it was a dairy, and we used to go to it like once a week. And that was back. You got your 4 gallons. They were in big glass bottles, and I would always get one that was chocolate milk. And there was a guy there, and I don't remember his name, but he had kind of like a bit of a fascination for me. And he would always try to talk to me and ask me about Godzilla and all of that. My grandfather was always like, nah, just stay away from him. And where I think it started, and I made sure that I wanted the directors to make sure that they put this in the film, was one time we were leaving and there were these girls hanging out. I think they hung out with him. And as we were leaving, the one girl said to me something like, what's your name, little boy? And my grandfather was like, come on, let's go. And she turned to him and she said, let me see here if I can do it right there. She said, I was just saying hi to the kid, old man, like putting a mark on him. And then about 3, maybe it was, I don't know, I was a child, so maybe it could have been 2 weeks, but I think it was like 3 to 5 days later. I was out playing in the backyard, and we were surrounded on 3 sides by cornfields. And we're not talking, a dozen rows. We're talking the corn went for miles. It was like being in Iowa, And I heard something in the corn. I thought it was a dog. I went over to the edge of the corn. I was calling for the dog. The dog, nothing was coming. And so I threw a stick into the cornfield. And about, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds later, the stick came back.
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah,
that's when it started.
Yeah, because that part's in the movie. Yeah, that is pretty creepy.
Yeah, that is in the movie. Yeah. And very bizarre. I went in and I told my grandmother. My grandmother, I'm telling you, that was exactly like my grandmother. Cloris didn't play my grandmother. She became my grandmother. When you watch Cloris in the fields, that's exactly how my grandmother was. Exactly. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to seeing my grandmother alive again.
I'm not going to lie. A lot of my grandmother, she passed away a couple years ago. I actually live in their old house now. But, because my grandma grew up on a farm in Georgia. So she was very, that old school mentality and stuff.
And that salty language. And, she was the one that always told me, stay out of the corn. If you go in the corn, we'll never find you. That kind of thing. And I came back inside and I told her, I said, I think there's a dog in the cornfield. It threw a stick at me. And she's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Dogs don't throw sticks. And I was young. I was 7, 8 years old. What the hell did I know? And then it was like a night or two later it started. And it started with, it was still summer. It was still warm. We had no air conditioning. It was this little farmette house. And it wasn't even a real farmhouse. It was more like a tiny cottage. And somebody breathed through the window. It was this long exhale through my window. No. And I freaked out, started screaming. I thought for sure it was Charles Manson because at that time he was back in the news. They had arrested him. I was only like 2 years old when they arrested him and put him in jail. But then they commuted his death sentence to life in prison. And there was a lot of news footage. And then the movie Helter Skelter was coming out. And I thought for sure he got out of jail and came all the way from California and found me in that corn.
Huh. There's a fun, Brian, I think it was Bryan Cranston. He talked about a story about being a kid on his family farm, and the Charles Manson's group came through there, and he didn't know it at the time. 2 years later, I think it was Cranston.
Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely pretty damn creepy.
Yeah, it was.
So what's it like? What's Cloris Leachman like? I mean, we talked a little bit off air. You said you had dinner with her when she was on Raising Hope, right? Did you interact with her on set
Cloris? What Cloris was like? Cloris was a force of nature. When she arrived on our set, she was still nursing a twisted knee. I think she might have even broken a piece of her knee. She was skiing at 83 years of age.
Wow.
And she was in Vail, Colorado, skiing, and hurt herself, going down a slope at 83. One of the most, first of all, a lot of people don't know, other than her being the crazy grandma character, which that's why she liked The Fields, because she wasn't the crazy grandma character. It was a dramatic role. She wasn't just hired because she's an old lady that'll swear and all of that. She really wanted, and she told me, she said, people my age don't get these roles like this. And she wanted to know everything about my grandmother. And we spent days looking at video, pictures. She would tell me stories about your grandmother. Tell me how she would hold a cigarette. Tell me all of this stuff. But most people don't know she was fluent in 5 languages, including Japanese. She could play a piano like she could have been, a professional, like a concert pianist is what she could have been. The stories that she had about Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson and Gene Hackman. She was, a pageant entry. She won an Oscar. She won every award, every entertainment award there is, she won. Yeah. So this woman lived a very, very full life. And so when I got the news, I got a phone call from her family that she had died. And that was the other thing. She did not pass away. She hated the phrase pass away. And if anybody on set said, when they would ask me the question, how old were you when your nanny finally passed away? She would stop them and say, people don't pass away, they die. She was very emphatic about that. So I've never referred to Cloris's death as passing. But one quick story about her is one night I was taking her to dinner off set, and on the way there was this beautiful sunset out over a mountain range. It was just, you could stop at the edge of the mountain and look out. And she wanted to see it. And so I pulled over and she just sat there looking out the window for, I'd say like 5 minutes. And then she finally sighed and she said, I'm not ready to go yet. And I said, well, we can sit here a while. I said, we have like 2 hours for dinner. She's like, no. She's like, I don't want to die anytime soon. I said, well, I certainly hope you don't. You have a movie to finish. And she started talking about, she looked at me, and I'll never forget her face. She looked at me in my truck and she just said, I'm having too much fucking fun. That's what she said. She goes, I love living. So when I got the news that she died, I feel that she was finally ready to go. She said, I'm not ready yet before, but obviously now she was ready. So she was 94, right. And she lived for 10 people. So there are no regrets about her dying. She lived a very, very full life.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys don't know who she is, just go look up her IMDb and your jaw will drop. Being like,
yeah, and you know what I love? When The Fields came out, somebody on IMDb left a comment, this movie is boring, and the old lady can't act. And it's like, dumbass, this lady won every award, including the Oscar, Golden Globe, everything. And you're saying, Mr. Expert, comment on IMDb that this lady can't act. Okay.
Well, I think that guy he basically played himself, I guess,
Yeah, what a moron.
Yeah, all your credibility just went. But well, kind of wind it down a little bit. I know you can't talk too much about it, but what's this new project you kind of got coming up in the works?
Sure. Well, I just released the special. Well, I didn't. Blue Fox Entertainment and Red Hound Films released that, so that's out now. It's doing extremely well. You can find it everywhere on Amazon Prime, Vudu. It's all over the place. It's a really cool story. The screenplay was written by Mark Steensland and James Newman. And when I read the script, I thought, I got to make this. So we did. And then I have a new one called Where the Scary Things Are. It's coming out later this summer. It's a monster movie. And I'm really excited. It has a brand new, fresh cast of young kids. And I love it. I'm very, very proud of it. And we'll have to get these kids to come on your show sometime once we can start doing the full court press here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have that on. Well, another question I like to have been asking people is, especially in the film industry, since it's taken such a hit last year with everything being shut down, how have you guys maintained, being in the indie scene, to still be productive and still do stuff, especially since everything was shut down for so long?
Yeah, that's a great question, Justin. Look, you've just got to push ahead. And anybody, look, it doesn't matter whether it's the film industry or anybody listening or watching right now that was facing their job loss and going, I got to do something, right? I mean, when everything started to collapse and the market fell, I had Where the Scary Things Are ready to go for a much, much higher budget from a consortium of Wall Street investors. Well, then Wall Street went in the toilet. So you're looking at, you just lost everything. Like your whole film is gone. And I had to figure that out real fast. And I did. And I'm lucky to have done that by persevering, being creative. You're not going to make the movie on the money that you originally had, but you still have to make a high quality movie on the money that you can get. And you have to stay alive in this industry. But that's no different for anybody watching. Look, all I do is make movies. It's no different than if you go into the restaurant business, if you're a food server, if whatever it is that you do, whether you're a librarian, it doesn't matter. You have to survive at whatever job. If you lose that job, you still have to survive. And I'm sure there's some people nodding right now, watching, listening to this going, yeah, man, I got to keep the lights on. I have kids to feed. I have bills to pay. So you've got to find a way. And that's all I did. I wasn't blessed with wealthy parents that I could lean on. When my mom died, I did not get any kind of inheritance. There wasn't anything to inherit. I mean, we were a middle-class family. My mom had a long, lengthy illness, and she wasn't a producer. So I didn't inherit a Rolodex or connections in the industry. And that's the one thing I can say with a very clear conscience, and that is everything that I've done in this industry, whether you love Death House, whether you hate Death House, Camp Dread or whatever, or The Fields, I did it honestly and on my own. I worked. Say again, please?
I said you created your own path.
Yes, I had to. I didn't have anybody saying, here you go, I'm going to take down the velvet rope and you walk through. I didn't have that.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like me doing art recently, it's like, I got involved with certain channels that have helped me along the ways, but it's like I don't have connections. I don't come from a rich family either. No. And so it's like I was lucky enough actually when the shutdown hit because I'm an emergency worker. I work as a tow truck driver, so I was able to keep my job, luckily. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are hurting. Oh, getting some weird feedback again. Oh, hold on a second. Let me Hold on. Yeah, let's fix that. Okay, hold on. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, it was just getting some weird echoing effect. So where can people find you? I got your Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at HarrisonSmith85. And you can find my films pretty much everywhere. I have 8 films, but Scary Things isn't out yet. But 6 of 7 films are on Amazon Prime, and Zombie Killers will be coming to Prime pretty soon. But you can find them all over the place. Zombie Killers was just a featured movie for Halloween on Hulu, so for their Huluween. And like I say, you can pretty much find my stuff everywhere.
And you're involved in some kind of podcast, right, that you do?
Yes, I have it's called Cinema. You can see it at the bottom of my screen here. It's called Cinema, Cynema, Cinema Podcast. And it's not movie reviews. What it is, it's a look at the entertainment industry and what happens when cynicism becomes a problem and prevalent in the filmmaking and entertainment industry, and how we end up getting sometimes some really bad garbage that sometimes people think is really great. And, you know, when these movies are made, you know, through cynicism instead of the true desire to entertain us.
That's actually kind of interesting. It's a different kind of take. I've never
Yeah,
heard like
I mean, there are enough movie review websites and podcasts. I wasn't going to add to that. What I wanted to do was make people critically think about our entertainment. And what inspired it was Jaws the Revenge, because I will always hold and that it's not only is Jaws the Revenge the worst movie ever made, it's not a movie. It was a tax break. It was a way to fleece some money out of a franchise that still had a little bit of life left into it. There was no desire by the filmmakers to entertain us. It was simply made to cash in and get out of Hollywood over Christmas to the Caribbean for 3 months. And as Michael Caine summed it up, I have not seen the film, but from what I hear, it's terrible, but the house it built is terrific. And I think that sums up Jaws the Revenge. And I built an entire podcast out of that. It's not about bad movies. It's about movies that some of them had incredibly high budgets with ultra stellar A-list casts, and they are still terrible because they were not created with the intent to entertain us, but rather fleece us and get our money out of our pocket.
Well, that definitely sounds. I'm gonna have to start checking that out a little bit more because I'm trying to get more involved with
episode 81.
I have to definitely catch up. Then it gives me some stuff to listen to when I'm at work at night when I'm in the truck.
Sure, yeah, you might dig it.
Yeah, no, I definitely. Well, I'm trying to get more involved with the movie side, but like I said, I was more comics and art, but I wanted to branch out because like my background's in interviewing, and I wanted to. Anybody that's got something cool to talk about, you know, story wise, creepy stories, doesn't even matter. I'm into talking to whoever, you know. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, this is still, you know, still a young channel. I just started it like 2 months ago, so I really appreciate you coming on.
It's my pleasure. And look, what I've said before is, it may be a young channel, make it your best, and just keep doing your best with everything that you can. Give it your best time. Give your audience something really good to chew on, and they'll reward you by coming back.
Brio Brando's asking, where is the podcast? Where can they find it?
You can find it pretty much everywhere. Apple Podcasts. It's on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify. I just got picked up by Pandora, and it's all over the place.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, Global Frequency. You know what? I'll add it to the link after we get done here. I'll add it to the link down there so everybody can find it. But yeah, again, thank you so much, Harrison Smith, for coming on. Dude, whenever you guys are ready with your next film, you want to do something, just let me know, man.
You bet, Justin, and keep drawing and keep doing all your work and your art, and keep crafting your podcast. People will return. They will listen. They'll reward you with their time.
I appreciate it, man. All right, you have a good day.
You too. Take care now.
Later.